Hey, I'm Sarithri, and I have no idea what I'm doing, but I love learning new ways to finish my cross-stitch projects. So if you've been following me for a while, you know that I love learning new creative ways to finish my cross-stitch projects. I don't share as much on YouTube because video editing is the worst, but if you check out my website, I have all sorts of tutorials on how to finish cross stitches as pendant necklaces, as bookmarks, as pincushions, as stretched canvases. There's so many. Point being, I love learning new ways to finish my stuff, and I have an idea, and I've had this idea for a while, but it's about time I get around to doing it. Binding a book. Is this a unique idea? No, probably not. I'm sure it's been done, but I haven't seen it. So I have this book. You might know it, Alice in Wonderland. It's well within the public domain, so I can make designs of it without being sued. And it was a thrifted book that I got from my Goodwill, so it's already even torn on the back. Like, that wasn't me. The inside cover, you can barely see it, but it's starting to yellow, and it's just not in great shape. It's still perfectly legible. I haven't found any issues on the individual pages. And this is an edition that includes Alice's Adventures in Wonderlands, Through the Looking Glass, and The Hunting of the Snark, as well as some background on Lewis Carroll. Excuse me, I need to go feed my cat. Okay, now that she's distracted, I can maybe get through this intro. Right, so where was I? Bookbinding. Right, so I basically have all of the materials for it. I've just never done it. Should I try it on, you know, something that I didn't spend 20 plus hours stitching first? Probably, but that's not how we do things here. So, this is the idea. I designed this Alice in Wonderland pattern with all of my favorite elements from the book, and I designed it with 16 count in mind, and then proceeded to stitch it on 14 count, so it's going to be a very close call. Like, it just barely fits on the cover. That's my bad, but it will fit, so that's fine. And one thing I want to do, I did leave all of this extra room in case I just wanted to completely wrap the book in this Ada, which is a printed Ada by Charles Craft. That's a very pretty pinky blue that my camera absolutely hates picking up. Normally, you use Bookcloth, which has like a paper backing, but I found some tutorials online to turn regular fabric into Bookcloth by using heat and bond to seal some tissue paper onto the back. So we're going to try that. Now, rather than just completely wrap the book in this Ida, because I would like to use this, and I really don't want to stitch anything on the back, because again, this is already 20 plus hours of work. I think I'm going to sew some regular fabric right at the edge and have just the cover be cross-stitched, and that's going to be interesting. I specifically want to do this almost entirely from stash. Most everything I had on hand, obviously the book and the fabric, I already had heat and bond on hand, as well as tissue paper, acid-free tissue paper, of course. I already had chipboard and PVA glue, and, you know, a cutting mat, silicone paintbrushes, most of the stuff I already had on hand. The only things I bought for this project was the mold cloth for the spine, which is pretty inexpensive, and the spacer tools, which was like 10 bucks. So, not a huge investment. However, that does mean that I'm limited in my designs and stuff. So let's go over what I actually have in my stash that I can use both for the book cloth and for the what's the Endpapers, I think they're called. Again, this is not a tutorial. I have no idea what I'm doing. I am following other people's tutorials online, and I will link them down below. But I wanted to show you that even if you have no idea what you're doing, and even if you are working with something you really don't want to mess up, you can do it. I can do it. I'm proving it to myself. Anyway, let's go over to my stash. Alright, so my fabric stash. It looks like a lot, but almost all of it is busy patterns that don't really work well with the book. Like, I'm not going to cover the book in ramen. Maybe a different book, but not this one. Jelly rolls aren't going to work. These are all pre-cut squares up here, and a lot of these are very busy. Like, it's not going to work very well. And this is also where I keep my cross-stitch fabric. That's where I got the Charles Craft printed Ida from, already in my stash, so that's already one thing out of stash. I thought I distracted you. Okay, so here are some of the ones I think might work. I found this glittery blue that could pull out some of the colors here, and I just have the fabric kind of wrapped around the book to see what it looks like. My plan is to just have the front be the stitched piece, and then stitch on so that it's just peeking out from the front there, and then the rest of the book would be the other fabric. And I'm trying to find one that might actually work, just because the bright blues here. Mind? No, you don't mind? Okay. I also thought about doing like a plain white. This is actually got little flowers on it, but they're super hard to see unless you look up close. I looked for anything with roses, because of course that's a big theme, but I think this might be too busy. Even this, which is a bit smaller print, seems like a bit much for this for me. I also consider just some plain pastels. We have this lovely purple and like a light blue. The light blue is probably my favorite so far, because that does kind of go with some of the elements there. The other thing to keep in mind though is what we're going to be using as the end papers. Don't have a lot of options, unfortunately. I do have some hearts ones, which would be really cute for the Queen of Hearts. Never mind that there's a big crease in one of these, but I don't know if the colors like work with this, and they don't really go with any of the fabrics that I have except maybe the plain white. I do have this set I bought a while ago. There's some really cute ones. This would be perfect for most books, but I don't know. Butterflies aren't really an Alice theme, but that could be cute. The zigzags, maybe. This cute gingham. I think my best bet is probably this one, because it's got the blues and it's got purples, and it doesn't fit the theme exactly, but again, we're trying to work from stash, so I'm not buying new things for this. So I think my best bet is to have Alice as the cover, this lovely pastel purple for the rest of the book as a binding, and then have these blue and purple butterflies as the inside papers. That's as best as I'm gonna get with my current stash. Okay, so I think I've put together all of the materials I need. Of course, we have our book, which I'll tear the cover off in a bit. We have what I discussed already, the actual cross stitch, the extra fabric I'm going to sew on there, and what I'm using it as the end papers. These are the only two things I bought for this project. Again, they're like spacers. You technically don't need them, but they were inexpensive enough that I said, why not? And then some Mockups. I definitely don't need this much, so I will be able to bind more books later. Cool. I did already have acid-free tissue paper for a couple of different reasons, mostly packaging. This looks new, but is not. I did have Heat and Bond, which I use for my sewing projects. I did find some ribbon that might work as a bookmark. We'll see. I already had corkback rollers. I already had some PVA glue that's been used not terribly much, but I do use it occasionally. Old junky scissors that can be used for cutting paper. A silicone paintbrush, which is good for gluing things without making too much of a mess. Of course, a box cutter for cutting this thick chipboard. I did have a bone folder. I don't use it very often, but I do have one. And then just some plain cardstock and some plain chipboard that we'll be using for the actual bookcase. I'm trying to think if there's anything else I'm missing. Oh, I do have crickets if I want to do any heat transfer vinyl on the spine or on the back. I haven't decided if I want to or not, honestly. We'll see. But that should about cover it. Now for the hard part, actually doing the thing. All right, now for the scary part. Tearing this off. I'm gonna try to keep that front page, but it's kind of stuck to it. Oh, this just feels wrong. Mostly intact cover. Now to go measure the crap out of this. Alright, I've measured out my covers and my spine and a piece of cardstock to use as a spine hinge. And I took my cross stitch and I figured out exactly where my cover board would be, which means I need to sew the rest of my cloth along that line so that that is my crease. And that way, I don't have a book and everything in there. It'll be lined up right as rain. Now to cut some end papers. Alright, I have trimmed my Ada. I have pinned it to some fabric, so I'm going to be sewing right down this line. And that should make it so that this is right along the edge. And I have plenty of overhang to make sure that I have enough fabric. This here, that's the exact cover. A little space, and then the spine, and that. So I have about an inch around. Oh, and I also cut to size the end papers. These are double-sided, so this will get glued to both sides of the Textblock. I haven't done that yet. I need to figure out what I'm going to use as a book press, because I don't actually have one. But that's a problem for future me. Alright, so I still don't have a great way to film my ironing board. If you saw my Q-snap video, you'll understand. But hopefully I'm not blocking the view the entire time. We'll see. Point being, I have sewn this on. I stitched as straight as I could. One trick I have is to kind of use the Ada as a guide when you're feeding it through the machine. That's the only seam in this project, thankfully. Could I have done it by hand? Yes, absolutely. Was it faster to just get out the machine and do a quick line? Yep, definitely. I also have this random smudge. I don't know where that came from, but it's on the inside, so I don't really care. So now we have one piece of cloth, and I pressed the seam towards the purple because that'll be in the book hinge, and I'm hoping that'll be less bulky than if it was up front. But basically, here's how it should more or less look. So that'll be the front, and then the spine and back will be this purple, and I haven't decided yet if I'm going to add some vinyl or something there. But so far it's looking good. The next step is to put some heat and bond on. Just slightly smaller than the book cloth, or what will be the book cloth. And I just need to iron that on. Now, since this is basically my test to see if I enjoy bookbinding, I'm not too particular on it being perfect. Should I have done my first project with just pre-made book cloth? Maybe. But then I would have had to buy more materials, and that is what we were trying to avoid here. So here we are. I also have a small bit that I made, which is what I'll be making the headband out of. We get out our acid-free tissue paper. And basically we're going to iron our paper to that heat and bond. What is that? Okay, that wasn't there before. Where is this random red splotch coming from? Yep. Not much I can do about that. Now, maybe I will do some vinyl on the back just to cover that up. Yeah, whatever. Peeling up the protective layer of the heat and bond. And for those of you that worry about your backs, it's going to be sealed in tight, so don't you worry about that. So now we have our tissue paper. I'm going to lay it slightly over and we'll trim the rest. And we're going to iron the tissue paper on. And now we're going to trim that to size. These are my paper cutting scissors, don't you worry. I'm not using fabric scissors on this. Could I trim this down with a rotary cutter? Probably. Am I stubbornly doing it with scissors? You betcha. Look, the rotary cutter's all the other side of the room, and then I'd have to go find my cutting mat. It's fine. I've got all these little bits that I need to dust off. And before I put the ironing board away, let's do this tiny bit we're using for our headbands. Oh, there we go. Okay, next up we're going to make some headbands out of this random scrap. Doing this on a random piece of plastic I was going to throw out anyway. I'm going to take my extra little strip of Bookcloth, a piece of twine, I'm going to cover that in glue, and I'm going to use that as the top of my headband. Oh, you can see that. And I'm going to glue that down carefully. Where is my bone folder? I just had it. It's right in front of me. Perfect. Squish all of that glue out. Ready. When that dries, I'm going to cut it down to size. Let's do the other one real quick. Now that I'm making a big old mess, we can let those to dry and then we'll trim them down. I have so much extra glue. For the rest of my glue here, I'm going to glue my end papers. This is double-sided, so it doesn't really matter which side. And I'm going to glue that to my text block. Yeah, I get that well lined up. Squish some of that glue out. Do the same on the back. I just realized I cut my butterfly pattern in two different directions. So one of them is sideways, so I folded it wrong. But that's okay. Mistakes happen. Now I'm getting glue on my desk. No. Let's use that edge of the plastic here. But yeah, pay more attention when folding your end papers to make sure that they're both being folded in the same direction. Got it. For now, though, I'm not that picky. Since this is my first attempt at this, I figure there will be mistakes and that I will treasure them all the more in the future when I look back on this as my first bookbinding project. Because I will be able to look back and say, hey, I made that. And I learned from it. Not only how to do this, but also what not to do. Because of now I need to label which way is up. So this way is up, and this is the back. And this way is up, and it's the front. Just in case, I'm doing this off camera because I'm bad at recording myself. so now we have this cute little text block. Next up, I need to put on the bookmark ribbon and some Mockups. And then figure out something to use as a book press. Alright, so here's my makeshift book press. We have these clamps that I stole from my husband, a piece of wood that I normally use as a photo backdrop, and a piece of wood I normally use to block my crochet. So we have a book press. Because the book press boards are two different sizes, I have them kind of resting on my lap while I work. I have trimmed my headbands. There. Perfect. Now ribbon. This is my ribbon. I believe the ribbon has to go first. If that's the top, I want it to go up and over. So let's do, oh, I dropped my bookmark. Oh no. I have my ribbon. Glue that on. Make sure it's nice and coated. Ribbon first, and then we're going to do the headbands. Oh, that's so cute. And then this one. I will remind everyone I have no idea what I'm doing. So if I'm doing something incorrectly, please tell me so that I know what to do it better next time. And if you are planning to tackle this yourself, know that you should try it even if you don't know what you're doing. But you know, on a book you don't care about as much. And probably not with a cross stitch, maybe with just normal fabric. Work your way up to it. That's fine. And then we want our Bookcloth. It's okay to not do things perfectly or the right way the first time, especially. This is just to show you that even if you do it wrong, it will still be okay. So I have the Bookcloth on there. And for a little extra strength, I cut an extra bit of that edge paper. It's a little too long, so I'm going to trim it down. And you won't be able to see this ever, but it'll be in there and it'll make it extra sturdy apparently. And I will be linking down below all the tutorials that I followed so that you can learn from somebody who might actually know what they're doing if you want to try this. But if you just want to watch somebody fumble, you're welcome. The person I'm watching uses a whole lot of glue just all over the place. So I'm going to do the same on top, in between. Just so much PVA glue. And that's okay, I have a whole bottle. I'm not worried about running out. I feel like I'm doing paper mache again. Alright, so this is supposed to dry for at least a few hours. So I'm gonna set this somewhere and be right back. So I have already cut these pieces out. And I'm supposed to not get glue all over my chipboard. I need to measure. And figure out what my halfway point is. It should be right about here. And this is just plain old acid-free cardstock. Alright, let's move the camera to more or less point at my desk. Kind of getting at a side angle, I'm sorry. This is actually a pretty shallow desk. And I'm going to glue my spine terribly, apparently. I know it's my glue starting to dry out. I did spend a bunch of time cleaning up. Okay. I'm gonna more or less center it to here. This random plastic bag to protect my desk slightly. I'm supposed to crease this down. On both sides of the spine. I'm probably going to end up having to voice over this because I'm mumbling. And I tore it. So I get to go cut a new piece of cardstock and try again. Possibly a new piece of chipboard too. Oh. That glue is strong. Yeah, now that I've peeled off an entire layer of chipboard, I should probably make a new one. But see, mistakes happen, and we can fix them. Alright. Let's glue our spine piece, and I'm using this random plastic to protect myself from the glue. Meow. Please don't try to eat my glue, cat. Okay. And I'm already making a mess. Good job. For the edges especially, get the glue. And then we're gonna put this down, roughly centered. And flip it over. Be careful not to tear the paper. We're gonna crease it down. Again on the other side. And then I believe we where did my pencil go? Here it is. And we're going to glue. Let's not get glue on my cutting board. Where's my plastic? Here it is. Oh, meow. There we go. Ooh, mouse cat, what are you doing? And then on the other side, do the same thing. Make sure that that is lined up. So that should be our spine. So now, once again, clean up our mess. Now we got our bookcloth. Now I theoretically want this to line up exactly with ours here. So I need to get that squared up first, because we want that front cover to be the transition between the two. means we need to hold this in place while I awkwardly glue the spine into place. Hopefully, yeah. That's where the seam is. Alright. So that's a problem. We have the seam folded over goes right there, causing a little bubble. So that's good to know. But not much we can do about it now. I don't have a nice squeezy top, so... Whoa, way too much. Probably way too much. Oh yeah. Regrets. So much regrets. Big old glob of glue. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Let's not step on the glue. No. No. Unacceptable. Out. Well, she managed to not step on it, but... Trim my corners. This is a rotary cutter that I use mainly for paper, so don't worry about my blade. Centered. Yeah, I think it did. That could have been worse. I'm going to pre-fold a bit because that Ada is pretty stiff. I need my pencil. See where there's extra layers of fabric right there. That's what's causing that bump. In retrospect, probably should have anticipated that, but I don't know how else I would have stitched that seam. I'll have to think about it. If you have any ideas, please let me know, because I would like to do this again. Whether it is advisable or not, maybe I'll just do the whole thing of it in cross-stitch fabric. Probably not, though. I don't think that that would be the best idea. We have our cover, even if it is a bit bubbly along the spine. I don't know if you can see that. That's where the extra Aida fabric and the seam allowance is. But otherwise, doesn't look bad. I will maybe put like the title or something on the spine to hopefully mask that bubbling. But this looks good so far. I'm gonna have to wait for my text block to dry, and then I can plop it on in here. Awful. Spine doesn't look bad other than that crease, but that crease is because of how it was sewn onto there. But it's, you can barely tell it while over here. Meanwhile, the back looks like crap. Yeah, let's not do that in the future. But I'm not going to redo this entire thing. So the thing with trying something new is that you're always going to mess up. And you just got to expect that. Now, this crease we've kind of disguised by adding the spine text. Is it still there? Yes. But what can you do? Now, these marks I definitely did not expect. But with a little ingenuity, I have a nice thick ribbon that I can glue on that will cover that right up and make it look intentional. We'll just line it up with the edge of that cover page. And there you go. Still not quite wide enough to get that other splotch from earlier, but it's looking a lot better already. So I'm going to glue this on, and then we can proceed with gluing the text block in and seeing if anything else goes wrong. This is what we're doing, is we're learning, and next time that I bind a book, it's going to look even better. Either way, I'm excited to have my own bound copy. Alright, it's officially time to case in this text block, which is honestly the scariest part for me. By the way, this is how the ribbon turned out. I think it looks intentional, which is all I can really ask for at this point, because this is how we learn. But yeah, actually that adds a cute little bit. So one thing I'm noticing when I put my text block in here and get it all lined up is that it gets very close to the edge. Like there's not much overhang, which is fine. But I think in the future I might do my cover boards a little bit wider. But for now, the most important part is that it is fully inside. See, like this little bit of a gap at the top and bottom would have been great on the edge there. So it just looks a little uneven, which is fine. We're learning for next time. So I'm going to use the back of my desk here to kind of press it up against and make sure that it's even. And then I'm just going to get into it. I have a scrap piece of paper because, again, I don't have any parchment paper. I didn't think that that would be the thing that I needed the most. But here we are. So now I need to glue here and then smoosh it on. So let me make sure that that is still lined up where I want it on the ends. Looks like it. Okay. Push it all the way against the back and then smoosh. And now we're going to flip it over and do the same on the back. Alright, I have the book in the makeshift press, and yes, it is time to feed her again in a minute. And I'm going to give it, I don't know, unspecified amount of time to dry, probably until I finish all my other chores, including feeding her. Yes. All right. I will see you guys in what will be a second for you. Oh my god. I did it. I made a thing. I have a book. It is not perfect by any means, but it is functional, and that's all I can really ask for. Let's point out the really obvious differences. If you had made this yourself and this was your first time, like it was mine, don't tell people what's wrong with it, because they probably won't notice it until you point it out. I'm gonna do it because this is YouTube and we like to display all of our errors on live for the internet to pick apart. But honestly, if I'm not actively telling you all these things, you will not have noticed. The only thing you might have noticed is this little bump here. That's the excess fabric. Don't know how I'm going to fix that for next time. Maybe just have the purple go further into the front so that the seam allowance is up here, and then just have slightly less room for the cross stitch. I do need to do some tests to see if this vinyl will stick to the Ada, in which case I could have the Ada wrap around further to the back and then have the spine be, or maybe just do the entire thing in Ada. Maybe stitch something on the back, who knows. There was, of course, the burn marks under this cleverly placed ribbon. That's fine. It looks intentional. I don't hate it. This fabric, this purple fabric, it's hard to tell on camera, but it is a little thin, so you can almost see the chipboard. Like, it has a slight brownish hue to it. Don't know how to fix that other than maybe gluing some white cardstock to the back of the chipboard before binding it. Before putting the book cloth on, just so that the background is white rather than brown. But if you're not looking real close at it, you won't notice, so that's fine. The other thing I pointed out while making it is that the Endpapers, this one has the blue butterflies going up, this one has the blue butterflies going sideways. So they were cut in different directions, but I only had the 2 sheets, so I had to go with it. honestly not noticeable at all unless you're looking for it. The other thing is that the text block is not super straight. Like you can see when I'm holding it this way that it kind of leans to one side. Yeah, it's not super straight, but neither am I, so that's fine. And when you're reading it like normally, you can't really tell, honestly. So, no worries there. But honestly, looking at it from a distance, or even up close, unless I'm specifically pointing these issues out to you, you're not going to notice. So, we're learning. I'm definitely going to keep this as my first bookbinding project. Hopefully in the future I'll be doing more of these. I don't know when exactly because I have a bunch of other projects planned, but this is my baby now. I'm going to keep it forever. Very unique. I could see this being a great gift for like an Alice fan, or you know, whatever book you decide to redo. If you want this pattern, it is the Patreon pattern this month, assuming I'm getting around to editing this and posting it by the end of September. Maybe. My Patreon patterns stick around and are available for the next 2 months, so as long as you sign up before the end of the year, you can get this pattern as well as whatever other ones are currently available. I do have 2 more bookish projects planned this year. I don't know if I'm going to film the second one because it's kind of a lot of work, but I will definitely film the third one because I've already started back in February. Yeah, this is another big one. So that's going to be coming hopefully in November. We'll see when I get around to editing that video. But yeah, I made a book, y'all. Well, I rebound a book, y'all. Definitely didn't make the text block, but I'm so excited by this. It's so cool. Alright. If you want more consistent content from me, Patreon is definitely the way to go, or you can just sign up for my free newsletter on my website. I will link that down below. And then you will just get one single monthly email letting you know what all I got up to that month, just in case the Instagram and YouTube algorithm didn't share whatever I did that month. I'm gonna go finish working on that other project that I just hinted at. Maybe get some editing done, we'll see. And I will see you next time. Whatever you decide to do next, keep creating stuff. It's fun. Yeah. Don't headbutt the tripod.